The higher octave of the planet Saturn. An Esoteric Contemplation. By Gregor A. Gregorius. A note from the translator. This short text was extremely difficult to translate for the idiosyncratic construction of the German language, at the time in which this text was written, is no longer used as it is in the present day. In fact, it is quite different in many regards. That is, the language, both written and spoken, is dissimilar in its use of style, form, and colloquialism. In fact, much of its overall connotation can, at times, be strikingly different than the presently understood and practiced form of the language, now in 2014, with which this translation attempts to translate and interpret. The sentences from the original German text are complicated and intricate, making them somewhat perplexing and, at times, loquacious. To complicate matters further, the very subject matter was and is itself difficult to understand. The unfortunate truth is that in order to make this text comprehensible, in the sense of its original intentions and discourse, the text would likely have to be rewritten, running the risk of, perhaps, some finer points and details being lost, a tragedy we would surely hope to avoid at all cost. Suffice it to say, I have done my best in translating this work with its readership in mind and have had the translated material further edited for English comprehension and intelligibility. I hope that what I have attempted here will inspire competent and articulate translators of the future to pursue the task of translating this piece themselves, perhaps providing us with a better work than what has been provided here. It remains to say that this is the only translation of the work in English known presently to me, and my optimistic hope is that the readership will gain a level of sufficient insight as far as was in my power to decipher, decode and present. As always, I would, and do, appreciate any and all feedback as well as constructive criticism what regards the translation of this important and rare work. R.T. The repolarized human ego, ascending by the refinement of a pure and spiritually founded intuitive perception to the borderline of its intellectual cognitive faculty, finds its pinnacle in the profound yet exquisitely ethereal mental vibrations of the Europe level of existence. It is this subtilized activity and process in attaining the Europe existence which brings one to the border of the causal level. It is at this border where begins the dominion of the great demiurge Saturn. There does Saturn vibrate in dark green light, his higher octave, there does he pulsate, resound, and resonate in vibrational magnificence guarding the threshold. If the ascended ego, through spiritual development and, now in Arupa existence, has reached the dark portal of Saturn, it is only because it now accounts as spiritually mature enough to be there. It would not be possible otherwise. It has been deemed worthy to move beyond the vigilantly safeguarded threshold to higher realizations, if higher can even now be used as a conceptual tool for understanding movement and being, lying beyond those spheres now past and left behind. Upon this acceptance and passing beyond does Saturnus, great guardian of the threshold and lord of karma, lower the torch of dead. For what has been said can only be taken as symbolic, words as gestures of thought and placeholders, signifiers for what truly can only be experienced. But let us continue as we follow in this beautiful symbolic narrative. It is here that the repolarized and Arupa existent ego encounters the earnest demeanor of the great demiurge. The guardian has now changed into a kind, understanding, and liberating presence dwelling in the dark green ambient light which surrounds him. The adept of the green hour now reaches their penultimate initiation and the rituals of the green twilight are disclosed. Through this disclosure and by way of the working of those rituals are the final secrets bestowed upon the green Saturn moon adepts, symbolized not by roses upon a cross but by the sublime beauty of white lilies. Liberated from burdening karma and released from terrestrial gravity, the ego now of an indescribable sublimity begins its further journey, leading off to the far away spheres vibrating a color lighter than both cerulean and azure, the light blue of Uranus. It is important to realize that the great demiurge, Saturnus, has quite little in common with the astrological Saturn and our naive pseudo-scientific knowledge we hold so high in our ignorance. What we can say about Saturn as the commonly known planet is simply that it is a material manifestation in the chain of planets representing, in a tense atomic structure, the lower octave of the planet being Saturn. Here in the lower octave, the disharmonic and destructive aspects of Saturn can be felt. Here is the exiled and terrible king, the Titan, the old man, and his sickle. Here is Cronus, Sackless, Aeoldabaoth. These forces and influences given off by the lower octave of the planet being Saturn are received as affect, feeling. They bring us through the melancholy of his exile, teaching us truth through severity. It is in part why he has been given some such titles as those named above. The influence of Saturn of course depends upon the position and aspects of the planet as consulted with the natal horoscope chart. It is, of course, absolutely necessary that the genuine esotericist, and more especially the aspirant of the Saturnian path, has this knowledge and the aptitude for its use. To see Saturn as a purely evil principle and as a manifestation of the devil is but ignorance and evidence of a mournfully lacking understanding, or, what's worse, a willful ignorance. For if the ego has gone its long journey and become a Rupa existence, if it has indeed crossed the threshold of the great guardian entering the causal level, that ego whose spiritual magnificence par excellence, now dwells in the totality, the world of causes and of causal events, the source of all things. What is more is that this ego is now also, too, active as a creator, as an impulse which both gives and bestows spiritual abundance while sending its pollinating and enriching emanations into the mental sphere. The being, as they are now ego of an arupa existent level, one that has been welcomed by Saturn to pass the threshold, is now permitted to possess and to master the cognitive and mental powers of being. The dominating creative urge of this ego will most undoubtedly work further for humanity as would a true bodhisattva staying back from their escaping the will of samsara for the sake of helping to unbind the spiritual eyes of others. But, to be sure, the ego can now also, having traveled such a long journey of the Saturnian path, pass the great threshold, attain an even higher development, even unto the absolute. Thus it is so that ever more superlative levels and sublime and unfathomable spheres await it along the path which leads ultimately, completing the cosmic stipulation it was given from the true beginning of being, to the completion of the great cosmic spiral of the absolute. For a degree of development as high and ineffable as what has just been attempted to describe, though the words used to describe it do not approach any sufficient justice to its would-be experience, there are no more rules by which to be governed, no high magic that could ever account for or penetrate its mystery, for the magnificence of the universal powers cannot be reached by any being as manifest or connected to human form. A degree of such development has no more paths, so none can be shown to him, there are no more teachings, so none can be taught, there exist no more protective devices, for what remains to be protected from? It is completely left for himself, itself, a creative being in the highest level beyond any human comprehension, open only to the cosmic irradiations in close contact with the Absolute. Even if the very knowledgeable and extraordinarily trained were to unite themselves in an enduring chain of supreme spiritual connectedness, still they would not reach such a maturation necessary as has been described above, for it is that each individual must walk the path of the deep and true realization in detached solitude alone. There is offered here no method for a sustained research that will provide the results expected of one who reads and inquires even with all their soul, for the path described extinguishes each question and inquiry into the darkness of non-understanding, for we speak here of things ineffable, unable to be fathomed. Here offered is but help, and then only as parts and hints to that of the path through high rituals of adoration. These rituals of the dark green light in the Saturnian twilight are so secret that they will never, and have never, been published. Even in the epoch of Lemuria were they existent and, too, deemed as a high and strict secret of the initiated priesthood, the foundation of a high moon cult. Even the priests of Atlantis in their first or second epoch very likely knew of these rituals, but loath they were to practice them nor hand them down through the ages, for, indeed, it was that the religion of Atlantis was built upon a high sun cult. Only the early time of the Egyptian epoch and strangely in Madagascar and Polynesia could. The esotericist, knowledgeable and resourcefully seeking, finds some rudiment of this ancient wisdom in the moon cultures which were handed down there. It must be said that the human who still gives praise and belief to a god of a misunderstood and polluted by man Christianity is surely not mature enough yet for the higher realizations spoken of here. They have not passed over the threshold of Saturn, for the guardian admits only the worthy and the ones who have desperately sought the true gnosis. He who has received the consecration of master, member of the Saturn Brotherhood, knows that the creative Saturnian magical impulse can be applied in both a constructive and destructive manner. He knows this and is convinced by that of his applied practices. Here there is no middle way, it is the same power that is applied. Only the will of the magus is crucial. Here starts white magic's beginning path of the black. One can pervert these cosmic Saturnian powers and apply them for destruction but also for blessing, bringing construction and harmonization, healing. However, for the person who is in the service of Saturn, and who has realized him in his higher octave, for him there exists only a pure Saturnian ethic, founded on an understanding and realization. It does not forgive, does not forget, but perceives the necessity and values the acquired wisdom discovered only by oneself in the making of mistakes and by the taking of missteps. The obstacles of material and spiritual life cannot always be overcome by a first attempt, and thus correcting oneself and positioning one's foot back upon the correct path are both necessary in order to reach inner and higher maturity. A master what dwells in Saturnian light has acquired, and thus possesses the ability to project his creative impulses into both the mental spheres and the pure astral worlds. For these reasons can he be rightly deemed a lord of the lower and upper light. He has earned, wrought by study, labor, and practice, the right and the capacity to be so called. He is standing beyond good and evil, where white and black are no longer dialectically opposed, where dichotomous thought has been left behind, viewed only for the use of its binaristic logic, but also now revealed as the cognitive prison that it, too, sustains. The law of the new eon, do what thou wilt, applies to him as it applies to all who know its meaning. This is no law of gratification and indulgence, no law towards hedonistic material pleasure or of weak unreserved decadence. No, this law demands the responsibility of his actions to the higher powers. Lucifer, Saturn is a high cosmic being and his servants and brothers must take great care towards their responsibilities, that they do not slip down into that lower octave, their becoming tools of the demonic powers, both losing their right to rule and create, chained as a would-be drudge of Cronus, lost in Tartarus itself. By conscious control of both the negative and positive poles of magic, the human being can reach the higher peaks of human realization, though not the highest, as explained previously, being a completely different cosmic process and accessed only by way of a Rupa existence ego state. However, through this conscious control one is led onto high paths of crystal clear realization beyond good and evil, however a lonely a path that be which one must walk to find such clarity of mind. With this realization he also knows in himself those laws of harmonic cosmic envelopment, to which compliance is absolutely necessary for the refinement and growth of his inner maturity. For him, it is of supreme importance to consistently overcome and dissolve the most dominating of inner tensions. As has been rightly maintained, mysticism can, and indeed must only, be a guidepost. God has a bright and a dark countenance from the beginning. This simple word God, which generally only hides that which one cannot comprehend or know but is used as an excuse for one's comprehensible lack, is only a signifier of the great oneness, the absolute, the totality, the zero-point energy, that which one cannot research by material human means. Being swallowed into darkness as mentioned above, it is that which lies behind everything and makes everything so. It is here that the intellectual and philosophical reaches of human thinking and reason are set to their absolute limits, bound to go no further, for to go yonder or higher is not possible, as it is beyond the realm of the signifier and signified, and thus beyond the machinery of words which create thought. It is ineffable. However, the human being of true knowing, they who dwell in the pure Saturnian light, are resistant, unaffected, even immune to the corrupted religious indoctrinations and the conventional pedestrian moral suggestions what flow through the human world. Such ideological rhetoric prevents any genuine attempt towards ascending into higher spheres and intuiting their higher realizations. He knows that even the deepest sorrow and melancholic despair, spleen, ennui, matures him through that alienated existential experience, the solitary path which he persists upon into remoteness and solitude, distant from other human beings, will, if he follows it through without becoming bogged down in the quagmire of anguish and misery through which he must undoubtedly trod, leads him to that beautiful, and illuminating inner felicity where the possibility of being and dwelling in Saturn's emerald twilight becomes not only possible, but attainable. Note, as was noted by footnote at the first mention of the word within the first paragraph of this article, Gregorius speaks of the Arupa level or Arupa plan. Here below is a brief explanation from the Encyclopaedia Britannica regarding this subject in hopes that it will provide enough insight so as to understand the word's signification and use within the article. Arupaloka, Sanskrit and Pali, world of immaterial form, in Buddhist thought, the highest of the three spheres of existence in which rebirth takes place. The other two are Rupaloka, the world of form, and Kamaloka, the world of feeling. The three are also referred to as Arupatatu, Rupatatu, and Kamatatu, the realms of formlessness, form, and feeling. In Arupaloka, existence depends on the stage of concentration attained, and there are four levels: the infinity of space, the infinity of thought, the infinity of non-being, and the infinity of neither consciousness nor non-consciousness. The Rupaloka, which is free from sensuous desire but is still conditioned by form, is inhabited by gods. It is also further subdivided into the spheres inhabited by Brahma, by the luminous deities, by the blissful gods, and by the deities of great fruits. Kamaloka includes the 6 heavens of the lesser gods and the 5 lower worlds, the worlds of men, demons, ghosts, animals, and purgatory. As superior as is rebirth in the higher worlds, such an existence is nonetheless temporary, subject to change, and involves the fundamental conflicts of existence within the limits of transmigration. This can be broken only by further spiritual insight, resulting in nirvana and release from the cycle of rebirths. Written by the editors of Encyclopaedia Britannica.